Welcome to The Painful Purpose, a platform where we discuss the different philosophies of mental discipline and engage with some of the most exceptional minds to unravel the paths and principles they've taken in their pursuit to mental mastery. I just wanted to begin by expressing my gratitude and excitement to have the opportunity to dedicate a platform towards mental discipline and all philosophies surrounding that, including mental well-being, and be able to create a platform where people can express their interests and their experiences in this journey towards mental mastery. My name is Daniel Zamora. I'm going to be your host. I want to preface this introductory episode by discussing a little bit about the conceptualization behind this whole show altogether. Recently, I was running and I was kind of reflecting on all the experiences that I've had in the past few years through endurance sports, as well as the people that I've met and the wisdom, knowledge, and lessons that I've derived from those experiences, from the people. And I was recently having a conversation with a good friend of mine and just reflecting on it during this run. And I thought to myself, why can't other people have access to these types of lessons and these types of points of perspective regarding physical activity, mental health, and how they can coincide and overlap as you pick and choose what types of situations that you're in and the types of mindsets that you can implement into those situations. So that's how the idea of creating a platform like The Painful Purpose sort of began. And I kind of want to discuss what is the painful purpose? Like, what does that mean? So through some of these lessons and through my life in endurance, I've began to question what is the most sustainable fuel source to be able to do something for the longest period of time. That's kind of what I'm after right now. And when I dive into this in terms of like a mental aspect, we think about motivation versus purpose. And this is essentially what I'm getting at. Motivation is great. You can read a book, you can watch something, you can listen to someone speak and become motivated through it. However, that motivation is somewhat like a catalyst. It's great to get started, but sometimes it's not forever. And almost always there will be a morning where you get up, that alarm clock goes off, and you do not want to get up. And that's where you have to implement purpose, which is something that's typically greater than yourself, something that's more sustainable than motivation in itself. And that's what I'm after. So when I talk about what my purpose is, originally in the past few years, as I've begun to pursue this idea and pursuing mental mastery, purpose has, to me, been elevating the people within my circle to realize that they're capable of much more than what they assume, what they imagine, just by putting in work every single day and being consistent. And it's across all the boards. It's not just with fitness, it's with education, it's with your work, it's with your interests, it's with your hobbies, it's with everything involved. So it originally started with just me doing work, me trying to better myself, become a better version of myself, better said. And as a derivative of that activity, I began to realize that people within my circle were also becoming inspired. And now I've been able to have great conversations, make new friends through that experience. And I'm at this position where I want to be able to share that platform with more people who are willing to listen and understand the value behind all of this, especially from somebody who, at least in my perspective, is a bit younger. I think that when I see and think about the people who've inspired me to get to this position, they're mostly older people. They're people who've already made it, and they're not really in that situation still. It seems like they've got it, which I know is not true. It's an everyday battle. That's something that you come to learn. This process is an everyday battle. Every morning, you have that choice of waking up, getting out of bed, or not being that person that you want to be. So that's a little glimpse into my purpose, and I want to explain a little bit more about who I am so that you understand who is the person that's preaching these things. So, as I said, my name is Daniel Zamora. I'm 24 years old. I grew up in Central Florida. And to just give you a high-level Cliff Notes review of my life, the first 20 years, I was basically an NPC, which is something that I will get to in a future episode. But it basically stands for a non-player character, just moving through life, not really thinking about things. And it got to a point where after college, I sort of had a moment of realization, right? So in high school and in college as well, I played sports, pretty normal kid, was never the best, was never the worst. Was a decent student. Again, never the top of class, never the worst student in class. I always lived under this philosophy of working smart, not hard, or working smarter, not harder, which is something that I still agree with to certain respects, but my perspective has changed in certain aspects of that, because there are moments where you have to learn how to work hard. And I think behind the idea of working smart, not hard, also constitutes the idea of making things easy, right? And that sometimes in life is not going to equate to a good outcome, because you don't truly grow when things are easy all the time. So anyways, graduated college, and the day I graduated, I sort of had an epiphany when I recognized that I had just closed a chapter in my life. And looking back, I realized I missed a lot of opportunities, a lot of things that I could have taken advantage of, more people I could have met, more activities I could have partaken in, more groups I could have been a part of. I really skated through that part of my life, and it resulted in me not feeling very fulfilled on that day where you're supposed to feel on top of the world. So it was at that moment where I was with my family and my partner at the time where I realized I need to start challenging myself more. I need to do something that's going to really make me feel proud of myself and essentially define a purpose within what I'm actually doing with my life. So shortly after, I think 4 days after my graduation, I began a program called 75 Hard. So 75 Hard, for those who don't know, it's titled as a mental toughness challenge, although the creator, Andy Frisella, he kind of hates the word challenge because he thinks it's a form of, again, like a mindset, not really a challenge. It's more of a program, I would say is the better way to put it. So this program, essentially, the fundamental idea is you do 2 workouts a day that have to be at least 45 minutes. One must be outdoors, and they cannot be consecutive. You have to stick to a diet, which you have the idea and freedom to choose what diet you would like. You have to drink 1 gallon of water every single day. You have to read 10 pages of a nonfiction book, something that's not Harry Potter or entertainment-wise, something that's intended to improve your well-being. And lastly, you have to take a photo of yourself every single day. So the catch with this program, it's 75 days long. Every single day, you have to complete all the tasks. And if you happen to miss one of the 5 tasks every single day, at the end of one day, you have to start over again. So, for example, if you're 32 days in and you didn't drink your gallon of water, but you had drank your gallon of water every day prior, you have to start over on day 1, although it's technically day 33. And so the idea behind 75 Hard is that it essentially rewires the way that you think about your day. It rewires your mindset in terms of prioritizing things. And it essentially helped me break through that feeling of not being fulfilled and not also trying to find the easy way out of things, because ultimately that's not the key to being fulfilled in life. You have to be able to work hard and then earn that reward, so to speak. So since 75 Hard, I've had so many doors open to different areas such as triathlon and running and swimming, things that I never really would have been involved with without that exposure and pushing myself to these new areas. Since that time, I've done 2 70.3 triathlons, which are otherwise known as Ironman 70.3s. I just participated in a different brand called Clash. Ironman is just a brand. They just host the race. They've done a great job with their marketing, so which the race is actually commonly known as the brand name. I've done plenty of shorter distance triathlons, Olympic distance and sprint distance. I've done a handful of road races, just running, and most recently ran my first debut marathon in a time of 2 hours, 57 minutes, which was a Boston qualifier, something that I had dedicated this entire year of 2023 towards just a few weeks ago. In addition to some of those credentials, I also will share with you that I used to be an extremely lazy person. I used to struggle with habitual addiction. I used to struggle with substance addiction. And I also pushed a lot of people away within my circle during that time because of those influences that I used to rely on and prioritize when we really shouldn't. And more importantly than anything that I just shared with you, I'm still a student in this process. I've only been involved in this sport and in pursuing this mindset for a few years. So I come with lots of humility when I think about how much I've learned and when I talk about this idea of defining your purpose and finding that sustainable fuel source to be able to pursue the things that you want to do in life for a long period of time. I'm not talking about 6 months or 1 year or 2 years. I want to find the fuel that's going to let me do something for 25 years, for 35 years. So that's me. Now I want to segue into discussing a little bit more about the content that's going to be shared on this platform. And what I mean by that is the certain framework and structure of what we're going to be sharing here. The first type is going to be me discussing different philosophies that I've created or learned or begin to understand through the experiences, through discussing with other people who understand these types of ideas, and basically just putting my own perspective on them and how I use them in my day-to-day life to make the struggle a little bit more tolerable, I would say. One thing, again, I'll say, it's always difficult to do this on an everyday basis. I think people are often misconstrued as to the fact that they see people who are excelling in life. They think it's an easy feat. Every single day it's hard. It's just a matter of doing it continuously, consistently, and it essentially becoming easier to tolerate as you do it more often, right? So I want to do a little sample as to 3 things that I essentially do and practice on a day-to-day basis that have led me to experiencing more success, and things that I believe are fundamental if you're in a spot where you're looking to improve your situation and change your current state. These are the 3 things that I practice that have made my life much better in regards to pursuing goals and changing situations that you're unhappy with. The first philosophy that I practice on a day-to-day basis, which is by far my favorite quote of all time, is failing to plan is planning to fail. So what I mean by this is essentially when you wake up and you don't have your plan set for that day, I can almost guarantee you will fail. This is something that really was instilled through my experience in 75 Hard, because I had to plan what I was going to be eating. I had to plan what my workouts were going to be, essentially because they were outdoor and indoor. I had to know exactly what the next day would look like before the day even began. And furthermore, as I've begun diving into other sports and other interests, especially in triathlon, you are managing 3 sports in one day. There's so many different types of equipment. You have swim equipment, you have cycling equipment, you have running equipment, you have nutrition. There's so many different things you have to keep track of, and you have to be able to plan ahead. You cannot wake up the morning of your race and try to pull everything together. It's something that has to be done the day before so that you are ready to go in the morning. You don't have to think about the other things that are essentially already taken care of. So failing to plan is planning to fail. That is one of my favorites. I live by it. I think it's also really important in your workday, just having a schedule, understanding what's going to be coming your way, being able to mentally prepare for those things. It's really important to be able to have success in the long run, right? The second philosophy that I practice that I think is imperative to everything that I'm talking about today is the idea that the fuel that's in your motor reflects how well your motor will run. So what I'm talking about is the type of food you're eating and the type of exercise that your body is experiencing. So this is essentially as if you were driving a car. You're going to put shitty fuel in the car's going to run poorly. It's the same for our human body, right? The way that your mind works, how efficient you're able to think, how well you're able to behave, your mood swings, your behaviors, all of that's correlated behind the food that you're putting in your body. And unfortunately, the way that our food system is designed in the United States, there's a lot that you have to avoid to be able to do this the right way. One thing that I'm going to mention right now in everything that I talk about is that everything is scalable. So I talk about failing to plan is planning to fail, right? When you look at your whole life, you have to make thousands of decisions every single day. But you don't have to plan all of those decisions all at once. It's something that you'll get better at as you go. Same thing with the food, right? If you try to just do a 180 and change everything you're doing all at once, it's really tough to be able to do that and be successful in the long run. So when I talk about how things are scalable, you can start small and then slowly build as you go. So on day 1, let's just start by making your bed in the morning and putting out your clothes, right? I think putting out your clothes is a better example because you're doing it the night before. So tomorrow morning I'm going to work. Instead of waking up, rolling out of bed, picking clothes when I'm half awake, I'm going to do that before. And I'm also going to go ahead and go downstairs to my kitchen and lay out my coffee, lay out my breakfast, have my backpack already in my car so that I'm ready to go. I can just get up and leave. So that's an example of planning so that you don't have to forget something. You get to work, you forgot your laptop, now your day's screwed, right? Same thing with food. So being able to kind of have an idea of, okay, I want to start eating better, so let me start cutting out soda. That's an easy thing to cut out. I'll start drinking Topo Chicos or any type of carbonated water, and going from there, right? So now I got that down, soda's gone. Well, let me try this, and then let me try this, and let me try this, right? I think in sports, especially in triathlon and any long endurance sports, fuel is so imperative, right? Your body requires fuel after about an hour of activity, right? That's from my experience, what at least I practice. So when I was doing my first 70.3 triathlon, it was a 5-hour race. And after a certain period of time, you need to have fuel. So you have to be able to plan, you need to understand exactly what's going to be coming into your body, and you have to be used to what you're putting in your body to be successful, and you don't want to have an issue where you're trying something new when the moment really matters and then things can fall apart. So that's rule 2. The fuel that you put in your body will reflect how well your body is going to perform. So those are the first 2 philosophies that I think are imperative to being able to change your life, right? The third one, which is one that's really tough for people and is tough for everybody, even myself, is to never accept comfortability. So what do I mean by that exactly? When you're comfortable, that means things are easy, right? You always want to be searching for the next thing that's going to be difficult, or a goal that you can set that is going to require you to push yourself outside of that comfort zone and grow a little bit, right? And the reason why I think this is important is the frequency in which you do so is going to allow you to become more comfortable being uncomfortable. Become comfortable being uncomfortable. So essentially, when you are starting a new job and you're trying to understand, how does this work? How does that work? I'm uncomfortable in this situation, right? Same thing goes for starting a new sport, a new activity, a new hobby. You have to learn to recognize the fact that, hey, I'm uncomfortable because I don't know what I'm doing and I'm trying to figure this out. I'm going to accept that and try to build off of this feeling, so that in the future, when I experience this feeling again, I can recognize it and be more comfortable with it and be able to pursue with it, right? So in my life recently, I have seen this piece of plastic. For those who are listening, I'm holding a Rubik's Cube right now. This is something that I've always seen all my life and never really thought of as something that I could solve, right? It's a puzzle. It's essentially just a colorful cube, and there's certain steps that you have to follow to be able to solve the cube. This is a great example of how you can take an idea that I don't know how to do something, but I'm going to persevere through the moments of struggle, and I will be able to solve it eventually, right? So that was my idea when I first started with the Rubik's Cube, and it got to a point where I actually figured it out, and I did it again, and did it again, and did it again, to a point where now I can solve this thing in no time without even thinking about it. And it's something that I think is super significant in all of this, is that the more you persevere through that feeling of being uncomfortable, the first few times I tried to figure this thing out, sitting there, in front of my desk for an hour, watching the video on YouTube, like, wait, what did this person say? What step? What direction does this go? Those moments of frustration is where people have the opportunity to quit, right? And that's where you have to persevere and keep pushing through that feeling so that you get to the next level. And then when you get to that point where you actually solve it, then you feel that feeling of gratitude because you've earned that ability to solve that puzzle, right? I love the Rubik's Cube because it's something that most people can do. If you have 2 hands and a pair of eyes, you most likely can solve the Rubik's Cube. It just takes time. And through this process, I've actually had friends and, colleagues who've actually learned themselves because they see me do it. They're like, hey, that's actually something that I can do. Also kind of ties into a philosophy that I want to talk about in a future episode, which is the idea of a trinity. The trinity is something that I've created in my mind where you have a teacher, you have a Spartan, and you have a Joe, right? The teacher is someone that you learn an idea through. A Spartan is someone who you see push that idea to the furthest of limits. And then the Joe is someone who you actually know within your circle who's practicing those same types of ideas. So for me in my life, understanding mental discipline and really having that exposure, my teacher was Andy Frisella, who was the creator of 75 Hard. Really taught about the ideas of conditions are never going to be perfect. You have to really understand how to master your mind. Then your body will follow, and then your life follows. The Spartan in my life, it sounds cliche, but David Goggins was the person who I witnessed who really pushed these ideas to the limits. And then the Joe is just somebody in my life who I saw practicing these formats of mental discipline, pushing themselves, and realizing and recognizing that, wow, I actually know this person. I know who they are. I've actually seen them before they were this person. So I know it's possible, right? And I strive to be the Joe in people's lives because I'm still trying to become this person that I talk about. And every single day, that's my goal. That's my purpose, so to speak. So those are the 3 principles or philosophies that I have developed and I practice in my day-to-day life. And those are the ones that I think have impacted me the most in the short period of time. And I hope that by sharing those, and at least through my perspective, you could try to implement them in your life and see how they can change your day-to-day situation, hopefully improve things. I also want to add that through these episodes, I'm going to be referencing my running and my experiences through triathlon a lot. And that's because that's essentially the lens that I'm looking through when I practice a lot of these things, right? I'll also mention work and other activities that I'm pursuing that also fall into the line of being able to challenge yourself and really push yourself outside of that comfort zone. But for the most part, in my perspective, it's running and it's triathlon and it's some more gym work. I also want to add that behind me is not a backdrop. It's not CGI. We're actually filming outdoors. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm sure you can understand by now that we're outdoors. If you're listening on Spotify and you're more of a visual listener, you can always go to YouTube and watch the same episodes that are available. A big goal of mine with this podcast was to try to capture something more unique than the typical, closed indoor setting of most podcasts that you guys see today. And being outdoors is a new perspective. I spend a lot of time outdoors, running 6 days a week. I'm always outdoors. So I really wanted to be able to implement a piece of this. I also have the opportunity to be living in the beautiful state of Colorado and would love to share these views anytime I can. So figured this is the perfect way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. With that being said, always want to add a disclaimer that because we are outside, we can't always control all of the factors of our environment. So if there's moments where it's windy or you hear planes go by, whatever the situation may be, I apologize, but we're doing our best. This is not a perfect setup. We're trying our best. And for the most part, just want to recognize that this is a real setting. We're not just filming inside. And that's kind of where you might hear things that may be distracting, which we hope to avoid. So that's going to wrap it up for our first episode of The Painful Purpose. Again, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in, especially if you don't really know who I am, taking the time to listen to me and just hopefully gaining a little bit of value out of the experiences and the lessons and philosophies that I'm hoping to share through this platform. It's my mission to be able to share these experiences of mine as well as the lessons with as many people as possible, and that can only be done by being able to create as much exposure as we can. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, it would mean the world if you could follow us. That way you never miss an episode, as well as being able to leave a review or a rating if you did find some value in some of the conversations that we've had today and in the future. If you happen to be a visual listener and you're watching this on YouTube, it would mean the world, again, if you could subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way we can try to reach as many people as possible. In addition, we also are on social media. We're on Instagram and TikTok as The Painful Purpose. If you search that, you guys can find our short clips. Again, our goal is just to be able to share this idea with as many people as possible. And as I was saying earlier, I want to be able to share this from the lens of someone who's a bit younger than most people who are out sharing this content. Again, as I said many times, I'm just a student in this process, and I want to be able to share my perspective and my journey and my struggles on a day-to-day basis to be able to hopefully help other people get out of the situations that they're in. One last time, just want to thank you guys again for tuning into The Painful Purpose. I'm very excited to share that we have a lot of great episodes to come in the near future, as well as a lot of great people, some exceptional minds that we're going to be diving into. Until that time, stick to the plan, and I'll see you soon.